Hello and welcome to another trigger tutorial. This one I have been very excited about to make because it is the ability to make custom UIs. This was something that was not even remotely possible in the extended edition, and there is no support for it either in Retold. However, with some clever trickery, I have been able to develop a system that we can use to show UI elements on the screen for any given player, and even include clickable and rollovers that the user can interact with in order to make scenes happen. This system is fully compatible in multiplayer games as well, so hopefully as you can see there's going to be a lot of exciting possibilities. Let's take a look at the scene we have in front of us. We have some villagers and we have a nasty group of fire giants which we have no hope in defeating with a simple villager. Now in the game you can, if you're Norse, turn your villager into a berserk. However, a berserk is obviously not going to cut it here. So let's give our players a bit of a help and an edge and see if we can do something about that. Let's have a look at our triggers. We've got our normal trigger loader, which is the same as always. But we got this new trigger called config. You'll see that it is set to run immediately, and that is important. What this is going to do is set up the UI system with some global parameters and do some internal processes to allow it to work. Let's have a look at what it is. We have three options in here. The first one is the use rollovers. What the use rollovers does is it allows you to make it so that elements that you hover over that you can click on will also display a tooltip to the user. At the moment, due to the way it works, this can only be turned on globally for all buttons or off. Second, you'll have a pull delay in milliseconds. This is unlikely to need to be changed, but what this effectively does is it determines how often the game should check to see if a button has been clicked. The shorter the timer, the more processing that is required. This shouldn't need to be changed, but if you're running into some issues, try fiddling this value. Finally, we've got a third option called debug click regions. What this does is it will visually show you the boundaries of the click regions on the screen for things that you can click on. We'll leave that off for now, but I'm going to later on show you what happens when we put it on. And what this is for is to help you match up what you visually see on the screen to what you click on. Right, let's go and create ourselves a trigger. So the first thing we want to do is we want to detect when the player converts their unit into a berserk, which is when we want to show up the UI in order to grant them some aid, shall we say. So let's have a look at that. So let's name this to show UI, and we'll have we'll use a dynamic trigger so we can do it for all the players at once. So we'll have for each player start, and we'll have a variable p, and it goes from 1 to 4. Next, we want to check that we have a berserk, so we want to do a count of a unit type. So here we go, and we're going to need the relaxed version so that we can put the player to the variable, and we want to check it for berserk. I can't spell berserk apparently. Oops. There we go. And I'm going to check if there is one of them. Let's head over to the effects. As we all know, we need to have a dynamic end. Let's put that in now, just so we don't forget later. We want the dynamic trigger for each player end. There we go. Now we want to define our UI. Let's just push that up. So the first thing we want to do is to create a canvas. you'll see that all of the screen stuff is under Screen UI NLT, which is a reminder NLT means that you need my trigger loader for it to work. So we need to first of all create a canvas for a given player. So, oops, we want the relaxed version because we want it for each player. And what this does is it prepares the screen so we can add elements and show it to the player. But what it also does is it sets the player where the other commands relate to. So instead of having to select the player on every single element that we add, we just simply set it here, and then all the calls afterwards will assume we're the same player. So let's insert another one, and let's start with adding a simple visual in there. So if we go to add visual, you'll see here that there is an X and a Y value. The X and the Y, it by default with 0 puts it at the very center of the screen. With the system I have, the anchor point of the elements that I'll show is the bottom middle. So what I mean by that is when you show something on the screen, the coordinates you enter is at the bottom middle of the graphic. This is something unfortunately that can't be changed. There's something you'll have to live with, but it's not as bad as you might think when you develop it. As you add content, it will go above that location. But let's just show an example to make things clear. So let's say some simple message on the screen. So we've got the visual, and then finally what we need to do is to show that UI to the player. So we do screen, and there should be a show canvas. And there's an option to hide the in-game UI, which generally you will want to have on. Basically, what this does is it removes all the UI clutter around the screen, so that we don't end up spoiling our sort of UI. Let's give this a run and see what we have. So we've got our villager, and let's convert to a berserk. And here you'll see now it says some simple message on the screen. So that's a good start. Now, let's talk a little bit about formatting some of these messages. So we can put text on the screen. Text by default will not wrap. You'll need to do that yourself, but you can simply use a new line character. To put new lines in Retold, you want to put the /n in like that, which wraps onto a new line. So let's just show you that with wrapping.
Skip on.
So there you go. You can see that now we have some text which wraps onto a new line. So that's how you do some text wrapping on the UI. Other things you might want to do with text is to show a color. So let's have a look at that with visual. So we can make part of this red. So for doing color, you can do a color tag like this. You put angular bracket with color, and then you put an RGB value going from 0 to 1. So if I wanted to have like an orangey color, I could say 1, 0.5, 0. So we have full red, half green, and no blue. And we'll just close that tag there. And now you'll be able to see that we have some color.
Yeah.
There we go. So we have the message part in orange. Another thing that you can do is to show an icon. To do icons, let's put it above this text. So we can we'll put /n there. And to do icon, you put tag icon. equals, and then you can put a size. So let's do a relatively big one. Let's do 200 size, and then you would put the path of the icon. Let's put a path in which I prepared earlier. I'm not going to cover how you get the paths, but basically what you do is you use one of the community available resource viewers to grab the paths. Mainly just make sure that the slashes are the correct way round, otherwise the game will confuse the /n for a new line and some icons will not appear. But you'll see that the slashes should be this way round. So this one should display a big Minotaur on the screen above our text. Hopefully. There we go. So we have ourselves a big Minotaur and we have our message on below. So you can start seeing how this UI might be building up and working. So we covered the basics on how to display a UI. Let's have a look now at doing some buttons. Let's go back to our UI and let's change our visual. Let's start to put something a bit more serious in. So let's put a Y coordinate of 4. So in this system, Y is upwards, X is left and right. So putting in a positive value will send the graphic upwards. You're not going to be using values more than about 4, 5, 6, or 7. That's the sort of scale range you're working with to get stuff around on the screen. But yeah, let's put our message in. Changing to a berserk in the hopes to win. I don't think you, let's put a new line in, have a chance. Okay. Let's have a quick look at that.
Tilbúin.
Okay. So it's got the message as you saw with it. Let's just put a little bit more in and emphasize it a bit. Take this offer of help. Smiley face. Now, let's have a look at putting a clickable button in. So we can select an object which the player can become. So to do that, we will need to insert a clickable. You'll see that there are a few options with rollovers and non-rollovers. We're not doing rollovers, so we're going to be looking at the normal clickables. Let's do a clickable, and we're going to need to say where the object, the clickable is, what width and height it is, the context, intent, and then we're going to get a callback with the player which clicked that element. So we had the text set above. Let's put it in the middle of the screen, but we'll shift it over. We're going to make two options here. Now, you'll see next we have a width and a height. Unfortunately, my system doesn't know how big the display is going to be on the screen, so it doesn't know how big to make the clickable area appear. In order to help with that, we have the debug option, but I'm just going to show you what happens. Let's put the debug on. I put the debug click regions on. This will make something appear. And we're just going to put quite a large width and height in for that. And for the content, let's put the icon in of the Minotaur that we had earlier. because we'll make that one of the options that you can become. So icon equals, and then we'll say, we'll do a big one again, 200, and then we'll put our path in, oops, and it's going to be player P to activate it. Even if we are going to need to close that, even if we don't say what the click does yet. So let's do add clickable end, so we can at least see it. But as it is a lander, we do need to close it. Let's have a look at that now.
Hver þar?
So we've got our monitor being displayed, and you'll see that there is these weird crates on the screen. So this is the debug view showing what the clickable region is. So the game actually, the way I do the clicking is I can't make visuals on the screen clickable. That's unfortunately impossible. So what I instead do is have it where when you click on an object, it clicks through to a hidden object in the background, which are these crates. And when you enter the width and height, the game will spawn the crates in such a way that that width and height is made. Each crate represents one unit on the UI system. So from here to here is 1 unit, 2, 3, 4. And with that you can measure how big we need to make the UI system such that we click where it expects. So if we really look at this, the portrait is 3 units high, and then you'll see that it horizontally it's 1, 2, and then there are 2 halves, so that's also 3. So let's go back and change the visual region to 3 so we can make the click region match what is being shown. So now if I set the width and height to 3 and launch it again, you'll now see that it covers the button pretty nicely. Fractional values do work as well. What it'll do is it'll just overlap the crates as needed to make it a fractional value, as long as the value is not below 1. I unfortunately cannot support values below 1 because you can't make a smaller object by overlapping confusions. So we've got the nice UI. So if I now turn off the debug, you'll see now that the crates that we saw will disappear.
Skipan?
And just have the icon. So now we have a clickable button, but we haven't actually said what it does yet. Now by default, what it will do is it will just destroy the UI. That's so that you can define and show another one easily. So let's make it do something a bit more interesting. So in our visuals we said that our clickable is -2, but I think we're going to need a bit more space than that. So let's try shifting things over a little bit and do, let's say, -5 on there. So at the moment the UI we haven't got it doing anything. So first of all, let's make it so that when we click the button that our unit changes. So I think there is we can do it either using the change type. Player change type for units, and we're going to need the relaxed version. And we're going to change our berserk into a minotaur. The other thing we can do is we can exit our UI system so we can actually see it. So let's do that. Screen, exit, and we want the relaxed version in that case. P, and you'll see there are 2 options. So one of them is to put the UI back to what it was. The other is to restore the camera. So when we go into the UI system, what actually happens is the camera is put into a very specific location on the map, which is not where you were looking at. What this option does is put the camera back to where you were looking at the time before you entered the UI system, which is normally what you want, because if you went and opened a menu, you want it to just appear as if, yeah, moving the camera is not something you'd expect the UI system to do, but unfortunately it's just how it works. But as I say, this option restores it, so you can't tell. So let's have a look now. So if I go to the Berserk, we've got our monitor. Oh, I've put it in the wrong place. I put it too far low. I meant to put it to the left. So let's just click it and show you. And there we go. We have our monitor now available for ravaging and destruction. Let's insert ourselves a second button so that the user actually has a choice. So if we go back to the clickable start, oh yes, I put it on the Y value. I meant to put it on the X to shift it over. That would explain a lot. So let's, for now, just do a copy of these bits. Obviously, if you're doing more complicated systems, you might use events or other things to save on someone's work and duplication, but for now, for this tutorial, we'll just keep it simple, and we will just duplicate the lot. I'll just move this down, and we want to end the dynamic trigger. So let's just double check that. So we've got the create, add a first visual, we've got the click start, we've got the player change, we've got the exit, and then we've got our second button. So let's put that over to the other side, and we'll put our other option in. Other option is going to be a Son of Osiris in there, and then we'll need to change our Berserk into the Son of Osiris, and we'll exit relaxed, and then we can show our UI. Let's have that, give that a go and see if we get that working.
Yeah.
So we can look at Berserk, and now we've got our two options. We've got our Minotaur, and we have our Son of Osiris. Let's try this Son of Osiris. There we go. We have our Son of Osiris ready for action in there. As I mentioned, the system is compatible with different players. So if I was to change to player 2 and start.
Ja,
Now player 2, we can get the same option, and now we can select the Minotaur option and have that. So, just give a few final words on for this part of the tutorial. Let's just put us back to player 1. There are a couple of gotchas to watch out for. The first is that the UI elements, just bring it up so we can see it. These elements can shift around slightly with different aspect ratios. So when developing, I would recommend getting it working at least for the 16:9, which is what I'm using, but also ensure that it appears okay for 4:3, which is the more legacy resolutions people use. Unfortunately, it's going to be very difficult to cover every single resolution, but those are the two that I would go. So what you can do is you can go into settings here and change it to windowed mode, and then you can set the display window to say 1024x768, just to check the 4:3 side and make sure those elements still appear correctly on there. The other thing to watch out for, and this is unfortunately a bug in the game that I don't know a fix for at this moment, and that is elements in the bottom right hand corner of the screen here can sometimes fail to appear. I think this is something to do with the game avoiding showing prompts in that area, because that would be where the minimap would be. But at the moment, unfortunately, there's not much I can do about that, other than if you're finding elements that don't appear here, then unfortunately that's tough. You'll have to find somewhere else to place them. But those are probably the two things to sort of watch out for. Before I finish, I'm just going to show you a couple of other things with the UI system quickly. So the first one I'm going to show is a rollover example. So as I mentioned, you can configure the UI system to use rollovers, and rollovers are on for everything or that's clickable, or off for everything that's clickable. You can add visuals you can't click on normally, but anything that you click on, you now have to use the rollover version. So let's look at that. So that's the trigger loader, and then if I look at the config on this one, I've set to use rollovers on. And if I go to display, I've got a canvas, and then I've got something called add clickable rollover start. This is kind of the same, but there's a few extra things to configure. So got the usual position, width and height. Here I've set to 3.6, which is slightly different to what I set in another scenario. But then you'll see that there's this relic filter here. Now, what this is the rollover system that I'm using actually hijacks the rollovers you get on relics. So the normal game rollovers, the users can turn that off in the options, which meant if I used the normal system, then if you added these rollovers, people who had turned that option off would not see them. However, for relics, this setting is overridden and is shown anyway. And so I use that system to ensure that players will see it, so that you can put critical information on those rollovers that wouldn't be on the normal graphic. So if you wanted like a symbol that you clicked on, but then the rollover gave a detailed description of what it did, that's where it comes in use. So with that, you need to select an unused relic here, and there's plenty of those out there that you can pick from. You need to make sure that each rollover has a different relic selected on there. However, if you have multiple UI systems or different players, you can then start repeating the same relic. The only thing you can't do is have the same relic on the same UI at the same time. You need a different one for each element on there, but otherwise you're good. So on there I've put, in my content I've put the icon, and then I've had a title for the rollover. I've called it Super Button, and then you can put there's a content region as well where you can put some text, or as I say, other things, or everything that I've talked about supported, so icons, all that lot. In this case, I just got it to exit the UI system when you click on it, and then there's the usual show. So let's just give that a quick visuals run up so we can show you what it's going on. So here we go. We have our super button, and yeah, you can see that I haven't quite put the right area on there. You'll see that the UI goes the rollover goes to the top left corner of the screen. That's a bug in the game, nothing to do with me. Hopefully the developers will fix it at some point. But you can see that it works. And as before, you can debug it. So if I go into the debug and I put debug click regions on like the normal one, you can debug and see where the click area is. And you'll see that the rollover matches what is there. So here I've made it a little bit on the big side, and so you can see it leaking over the edge on there as an example. You can also see an example of where the overlapping crates can be used to make a smaller region. So here you got 1 crate, 2 crates, 3 crates, and then this fourth one overlaps a little bit in order to reduce the height from 4 to 3.6, which is what I had set. So there's an example of debugging and rollovers again. And finally, I'm going to show an example of putting objects in. So it is actually possible to put world objects into the UI that the user sees. You can, as well as visuals. So I'll show you how you can do that quickly. There are some limitations with that, but so first of all, again, normal trigger loader. Now in the config, one thing that you'll need to set on your map is to turn off the tie to ground. The reason for that is that the UI system is very far deep underground, And so if you want objects to appear in that UI system, you're going to need to be able to place those objects underground. So the tighter ground flag is going to need to be turned off so that you can place objects there. If I go into the show UI, I've got this method called getWorldOrigin declared. What this does is, for a given player, it will set the location of where the UI elements in the world appears to a vector variable, and then you can use that to then position objects of your own in there. So I'm saying I want to store player 1's location to vector v, and I'm then going to place an Anubyte at that location, and then we can create our canvas. I've just added some visual text, so here's an object being displayed in the UI screen, and then we can show the canvas. So if I go into that now, you'll see that we have an Anubyte being shown on our UI screen, and you can see there it does like a top-down view. If that's not ideal, you'll have to rotate the objects. Just a note on displaying objects, I have the field of view on this UI view, sort of camera position set to 1. This is in order to remove the 3D aspect of the view in order to make the clicking more accurate, because objects like those crates I was using are 3-dimensional, not 2-dimensional, and one of the issues is that obviously when you have a camera normally in 3D, it's not a flat thing you've got to account for the angles and things. Having the field of view set to incredibly low makes everything line up on the screen very nicely on a flat surface. That's how the coordinate system is consistent on here. But the reason I'm mentioning that is some objects on the screen may look a little strange in this view, so just be aware of that. But yeah, you can see, you can click on it, although you probably don't really want to, as you can see. It brings up stuff, but you can put fancy things like skybox or some visual effects if you want on there to spruce up the UI screen. Obviously they actually exist in the world, so you'll need to account for that. So of displaying the Anubyte will give you line of sight, so you'll need to ensure that that is not granted when you're showing the UI, and to destroy any such objects when you have finished with them. Hopefully that covers most areas of the UI system. This is a feature that I've been very excited to tell everyone about. I think it's got a lot of potential. So far I've done various things, so an examples being the first map I ever developed such system on, I had a perk card system where I displayed cards that you could select and get perks for your civilization. In Mythic Strike, I used the system to create an option screen, so you can bring up a visual and then a player can configure the game by clicking various buttons and adjusting, and putting different text on. The RPG I'm making at the moment, I'm using it to create a skill tree view. I've got a dialogue tree system, so I've got you can talk to a character, and you'll have like a visual on the left, and then like some text and options you can click on the right. There's just I've done an inventory system, so you can show like your character profile and then like some items you're carrying and in your sort of what's equipped, and have an inventory system on the right showing what items you're carrying but not equipped, and then you can hover over and click on the items. There's just so much potential out there, and probably a ton of things that I haven't thought of that you will do. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a taste of what is possible, and I really look forward to seeing everything that people will be able to create with this. And good luck map making, and catch you all in the next tutorial. Goodbye.